The River King by Lane Walker, Chapter 1. "This is boring," said 8-year-old Hugh, talking to his grandpa sitting next to him on an old folding chair. The pair loved fishing together, but they weren't enjoying much success that day. "Just keep that line in the water. Try one more cast," replied Grandpa with a smile. The pair had been fishing from the bank of a nearby river. It was early March and the water was still cold. Fish had just started making their way up the stream, but the bites were slow. Grandpa had hoped to catch enough fish to fill his homemade smoker he had designed and made from an old refrigerator. Hugh took his pole and continued to cast his line for another 15 minutes. "Grandpa, let's just go home. It's too cold and the fish aren't biting," complained Hugh. "Keep at it, buddy. Just try one more cast." "Grandpa, I've cast at least 30 times since the last time you said that," complained Hugh. One of his grandfather's most effective strategies for teaching his family the art of fishing was to stay positive and act as though they were just one cast away from catching something. That's why they call it fishing. Sometimes it just takes one more cast. One bite can change everything, Grandpa reminded him. It's the idea that you could catch a wall hanger or a record book fish on your very next cast. That's what makes fishing so great. Hugh squirmed in his cheap plastic chair. He loved fishing with his grandpa. In fact, he loved spending time with him no matter what they did. "Grandpa, I just think we should go. Nothing is biting, and it's windy. I would stay all day if we were catching something, but we aren't. It seems like we're just wasting our time," said Hugh. "Wasting your time? Hugh, you can learn a lot about life by casting your line in the water. It seems like today you kids want instant everything, but that isn't how life works. Just because something isn't working out doesn't mean you just up and quit. You could be missing out on something special," said Grandpa. Without saying another word, Hugh pulled back his pole and cast back into the river. 10 minutes later, he felt a strong pull on the end of his line and set the hook, pulling in a big catfish. Grandpa just smiled. "Okay, I kind of get it, Grandpa, but it's just one fish. We've been out here a long time. I've made at least 50 more casts since the last time you said one more cast," Hugh reminded him. Grandpa sat upright in his chair with a sudden burst of energy. "Hugh, I think it's time I told you a story. A special story about a once-in-a-lifetime adventure that changed my life forever. I learned a lot of things on this particular fishing adventure. One of the lessons I learned was that anything can happen when your line is in the water." When Grandpa settled in to share his life-changing event, something strange, almost magical happened. Hugh had heard hundreds of his grandpa's stories over the years because the old man was a great storyteller. His tales were exciting and always captivated his audience. Most of them revolved around hunting or fishing. Some were about his days in the Navy. When he started telling Hugh this story, however, a strange transformation took place. Grandpa flashed back over 50 years to a simpler time when he was a young, 15-year-old Bobby chasing river kings, and began to share his story. Chapter 2. It was the fall of my freshman year of high school. My 3 best friends and I had made plans to fish and camp down the local Cass River for 3 days. All of us boys grew up on the river that ran right through our hometown. River life was a normal, everyday thing for most kids at that time. The fishing trip was supposed to be a vacation of sorts for the 4 of us. It was late October, and we had 2 extra days off of school, giving us a 4-day weekend. We began by making preparations to build a floatable raft for our trip. The raft's main purpose was to provide a place to fish from during the day and to sleep on at night. Our crew was close. We had been the best of friends since first grade. All of us competed and played in sports together. In fact, we did almost everything together. The 4 of us were similar, but also had different characteristics that made each of us unique. I guess I was the ringleader of the group, probably because I was the most outspoken and wasn't afraid to make decisions. I wasn't very big back then, but I was tough. Johnny was tall, the purest athlete of the group. He was an African American, and he was always the best at everything he did. It didn't matter if it was basketball or playing jacks. He always was on the winning team. His determination and attitude made things interesting for the group. We all knew in advance that Johnny planned to catch the biggest fish on our trip. There wasn't even a debate about it because we all knew Johnny would win. David was also athletic and strong. He didn't look like a typical freshman boy. His sport was football, and he was a wrecking ball on the field. Whether playing running back or linebacker, David always was sure to make a play. While he liked football, his true love was the outdoors. Obsessed with hunting and fishing, he was a true outdoorsman. It was his idea for the 4 of us to take an adventure down the Cass River that fall. Chris was the quietest one of the group. While he wasn't the most outgoing, when he spoke, everybody listened. He was a real tough guy. Everyone around town knew not to make Chris mad. His loyalty was unmatched, and none of us ever worried about bullies when we were around Chris. We knew no matter what, Chris would take care of it. We all stuck together and loved adventure. It was the last Friday before a planned fall break. Teachers had a professional development day, so we had the following Thursday and Friday off from school. The next Saturday was Halloween. We were all sitting in our 6th-hour science class when our teacher, Mr. Hill, began talking about fish native to the Cass River. Mr. Hill used a film projector to show various pictures of the river and the species of fish in it on the white wall of our science lab. "Now this is the king of the river, the northern pike," said Mr. Hill. Even though science was one of my favorite subjects, I started to get bored with the old pictures and projector. But when the picture of the pike was displayed, the entire class gasped at the sight of the monster fish. I turned behind me to look at David, and I knew he would love seeing such a massive fish. The picture showed Mr. Hill holding a huge pike that had to be at least 40 inches long. The fish had a large head and a prehistoric-looking razor-sharp teeth. Even though the picture wasn't in color, the sight of the fish was mesmerizing. It looked like a villain out of a comic book. David leaned up and whispered in my ear, "Bobby, I have an idea. I think I know the perfect way to celebrate Halloween this year. A fishing trip down the Cass River." Chapter 3. The bell rang and everyone hurried down the hallway for lunch. The lunchroom was full of excitement. At first, I thought they were all charged up about the fish picture in Mr. Hill's room. I had forgotten that it was Friday. Every Friday, the lunch ladies made giant chocolate chip cookies that they sold for 10 cents, which accounted for the buzz in the room. Plus, we had only 3 days of school left the next week before our 4-day fall vacation, which added to the powder keg of enthusiasm. We sat down at the back of the lunchroom at our usual table that faced the school's main parking lot. Guys, I have the perfect idea for a Halloween adventure, David began. Every so often, the four of us tried to do a special activity or build something together. Last July, we had spent weeks building and firing off wooden model rockets. It had been a lot of fun, but one of Johnny's rockets started a fire in Mr. Williams' hayfield, ending our summer recreation. This time, let's do something totally crazy. Let's camp, fish, and float down the Cass River. I can't swim, Chris quickly whispered. Oh, he whispered it. Trying not to be heard and seem like a wimp. Don't worry, the river isn't that deep, David reassured him. It's cold anyway. I don't plan on getting wet. There are only a couple of spots that will even be over our head. We all loved the outdoors. Hunting and fishing were passions we shared. The idea of spending 2 nights on the river with my best friends, with no adults bossing us around and telling us what to do, sounded like a perfect plan. I'm down for it, said Johnny. In, I quickly replied. Sure, why not, said Chris. That night after practice, we all met at David's house to start planning our fall adventure. The first thing we need to decide is when we are going, I said. Next Thursday, the first day of fall vacation, has to be the day, David replied quickly. We all nodded in approval. Okay, the next thing we need to figure out is how we're going to get down the river, I added. The four of us sat in silence until Chris spoke up. What about a giant raft? You know, like the one that Huck Finn would have built? A raft would be perfect, Johnny chimed in. But does anyone know how to build one? I asked them. My dad can help, replied David. His dad owned a construction company that built all kinds of stuff, mostly pole barns and houses. Okay, so how far down the river are we going to go? Where can we put the raft in the river? And where will we get it out? Asked Chris, who was always the practical one. I was thinking we put in behind my house, David replied, and plan on getting it out downtown at the park. There's a dock there, so it'll be perfect. That's like a 12-mile trip. Isn't that a long way to go on a raft? Johnny questioned. Exactly, David shot back. We don't want no wimpy trip. Plus, the park is really the only place we can get the raft back out of the water. At first, the trip sounded crazy. The idea of going down the river in itself wasn't that scary, but the route had us traveling on it for over 12 miles. Guys, doesn't that section of the river go by the lost cemetery? I asked in almost a whisper. Yeah, it does, but we'll just plan on doing it during daylight, so it won't be that spooky, David explained. The lost cemetery was part of our town's folklore. While the cemetery was built in the early 1800s, it had been abandoned for over 50 years. Most of the tombstones had deteriorated or been destroyed. The ones that remained were cracked and damaged from years of weathering. We had learned about the cemetery in our history class in 6th grade. The teacher took the class there every spring to explain its history. The most famous Civil War soldiers were buried there. The cemetery itself is spooky, but what makes it even more eerie is the fact that it is located on a dead-end road 3 miles from anyone or anything. The isolated location of the cemetery added even more to the mystery of the lost cemetery.